Welcome to MTNmeister, the podcast that features some of the most incredible athletes who push the extremes of human endurance.
You know, I got to 27 years old and I was 340 pounds, completely inactive.
Wait, what? Is this the right guy?
I know it's ridiculous, but what if I tried to run a 100-mile ultramarathon?
Now that's more like it. Welcome to MTNmeister. Hello, everyone. What you're about to hear is a pretty neat story, and it's happening as we speak. If the upcoming episode just isn't enough, shoot me an email, ben@MTNmeister.com. We have some extra content. I'll send it over to you. And while you're at it, please go to iTunes and drop us a rating and review. That helps us out. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to MTNmeister. This is Ben, your host, and with us today we have Jeffrey James Binney. Hello, Jeffrey.
Hey, Ben. How's it going?
It's Jeffrey, not Jeff, right?
Well, I'll answer to most things, but it is Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, okay. If you don't know Jeffrey already, for the listeners, he is currently training for the Leadville 100 on Saturday, August 22nd. And on MTNmeister, this is typically something we'd expect to hear, but Jeffrey's background is anything but typical. Jeffrey grew up on a pig farm in Missouri and is now a comedian based out of Los Angeles. A little more than 3 years ago, he lost his mom to obesity, and he himself weighed over 340 pounds at his heaviest. He has now lost over 100 pounds and is in the process of creating a hybrid comedy documentary about this whole journey in the Leadville 100 called Once Is Enough. Jeffrey James Binney, congratulations on the journey thus far. Welcome to MTNmeister.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you grew up on a pig farm. I grew up on a llama farm.
What?
Yeah.
I think that definitely tops my pig farm. Where does one grow up on a llama farm?
It was about an hour outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
What do you do with llamas after you raise them?
Right. That's like always the question that we get. And we had a lot of llamas. At one point, 36, I think, was our max.
Wow.
But they were kept mostly as pets, to be completely honest.
Huh. Like for your family, or you would sell them?
Yeah, it kind of got out of control. So you know, we had like 10 as pets, and then they started to multiply.
Sure. Yeah, they'll do that.
Right, yeah. And then we thought, well, yeah, maybe we could sell some, not really for a profit, just as a hobby. And yeah, llama farms I don't think are too profitable in general.
Yeah, well, if I wanted to have some llamas for pets, though, I think like 37 is probably the sweet spot. That's
right.
Definitely the number I'd want.
At least one out of the 37 has to be friendly, right? Like,
yeah, obviously.
Did you help out on the pig farm as a kid?
As little as possible. I absolutely hated it. I really hated it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was. I think it's because, you know, the only time my dad really needed my help was when it was like time to like process the hogs, like you know, like do the vaccinations or castrate them. None of which were pleasant experiences. And, you know, I didn't know it at the time, but my little, you know, hippie vegan self was really turned off by that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wanted to name the pigs. I couldn't imagine why he would sell them. You know, I was just like the worst pig farmer's son ever. Did I mention I'm vegan now?
So vegan, son of a pig farmer. You're a comedian as well.
Yeah, occasionally.
So where did this idea come about to run an ultra?
It was a wild departure from who I once was growing up. You know, I played basketball in middle school and I hated it. I played football in middle school and I hated it. I was never, ever an athlete. I took tap dance classes and loved it. But aside from that, I was just the least active person. In seventh grade, my coach took me out of the game at one point because I had such a bad attitude. I would not even run up and down the court. I would just kind of saunter along. He took me out of the game. He said, Jeffrey, you're staying on the bench until you let me know that you want to play basketball. And I didn't want to play basketball, so I sat there the rest of the game in silence. Oh, my mom was so furious. But anyway, I was not an athlete at all. My family, you know, I grew up on a farm, and we eat well. My mom was a master in the kitchen, and you know, I got to 27 years old and I was 340 pounds, completely inactive. And my mom passed away from heart disease, but she was, you know, suffering from multiple obesity caused issues. She had severe diabetes, heart failure, you know, everything that comes along with, you know, inactivity and obesity. And so it kind of, you know, it kind of set off a light bulb for me. She was only 58 years old. And, you know, it just made me realize that's obviously not what I want, and that it would be difficult, but worth it to, you know, get can I curse on here? To get my crap together. How about that? So, you know, she was in the ICU at the end for 3 months, and, you know, we had a hotel room nearby, but I just didn't feel comfortable really leaving her overnight by herself. So I would sleep in the ICU waiting room at night. And I just got to the point where I was just like going crazy, living in a hospital. And I literally went out and bought a pair of running shoes and some shorts. And I went and found a state park, and I just started running. I literally just in a fury drove to the woods, and it was amazing. It was so wonderful. I was away from people. It was beautiful. You know, just getting that much anxious energy out was incredible. And, you know, at the time I had no idea that it was going to be the start of an addiction. But that's really what it has turned out to be, a very healthy addiction. Running
it's so therapeutic.
Absolutely. And I'm not an iPod kind of guy when I run. Mm-hmm. I don't like to listen to music. Like I like the silence. Like even on like super long runs, I love just chilling with myself for 7 hours on the trail. That's how I like it. I get all my best thoughts thunk while I'm out there, and I come back and I'm cleared in the mind and ready to go.
Exactly my feeling as well. I don't put in headphones. I like to kind of bare bones it. When I run, I think of so many different things. Like I get a lot of ideas for the podcast while I'm running. I'm wondering if you get your comedic material from when you're running too.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the whole idea for this entire film came about while I was running. Mm-hmm. While my mom was ill, I was living in New York City at the time, and, you know, things were kind of starting to happen career-wise, and I ended up coming back to Missouri to help take care of her, and I was gone for basically a year, and nothing puts the brakes on a acting career like disappearing from civilization for a year. So I got back. I decided to move to the West Coast. And, you know, things were just going really slowly career-wise. And I was at the point where I just wanted to be in the woods all the time. And I was like, you know what? I've got to figure out a way to reconcile my desire to keep myself secluded in the woods and my desire to be creating comedy. And I thought, what about... I know it's ridiculous, but what if I tried to run a 100-mile ultramarathon and then I did a show about it? You know, as a comedy writer, there's nothing better for the writing process than having some sort of really interesting abnormal experience to write about. And so it sounded like the perfect storm. And then I mentioned it to a couple friends, and they're like, yes, absolutely, but you have to make a film of the process. You have to document this. And so I started trying to figure out how it could work, if it could work. I started reaching out to people in the industry that I knew to kind of start compiling a team to help kind of get our thoughts together. And And so our thoughts are together, and we just launched our crowdfunding campaign, and we're finally getting rolling. And so yes, absolutely. I guess this is the very long-winded answer to the question. Is I do tons of thinking, especially creatively.
And you have this footage during like a 10-minute video that you have on the Indiegogo page. There's some footage of you running, of you talking while you're running. And those are my favorite, because sometimes the thoughts that you have while running are like very deep or creative or depressing or really happy. Like there's a whole gamut of emotions. So I really like how you have that footage of while you're running. Yeah,
I mean, we feel like that's where the most interesting stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's one of our logistical challenges at Leadville is, you know, it'd be great to have cameras at all of the aid stations, but the chances that, you know, my physical or emotional breakdown happens at the aid station is probably not that good. Right. It's probably going to happen, you know, halfway up Hope's Pass. And so we've really got a challenge on our hands of figuring out how to get really high quality footage in between all of those aid stations, because I agree, that's when it happens, and it's so much more effective to have a camera in my face while I'm in tears thinking I can't move anymore than it is for me to, you know, recount the experience at the aid station. So I'm glad you said that. Actually, I had a really, really terrible run yesterday, and luckily I had my camera with me and I whipped it out. And it's so fascinating to me how silly and emotional I get at times while I'm running. I mean, I was really, really roughing myself up yesterday over quitting my long run early, nearly in tears. And, you know, I got back to my Jeep and had a Cliff Bar and I was fine. And I was like, was I seriously just crying out there in the middle of the woods? But I was.
So let's talk about your journey thus far. If we rewind when you started running, how far could you go and what was your pace? And then let's talk about how you've progressed month by month.
Yeah. So when I first started, I don't know, that first time doesn't really count because I had so much pent up energy and angst that I probably ran a couple miles. But on a normal day, I could have gone maybe a half mile, maybe. And that's at turtle pace. You know, that's at like, I don't know, 18-minute miles. And I set a ridiculous goal of going from the sofa to a 20-mile in Kansas City, the Psycho Waco. I was not prepared for it. My mom had just passed away 3 weeks before, but I decided to do it anyway. And it was miserable. It was February in Kansas City. The temperature was 17 degrees. And I was last. I was way last. Like I wasn't even close to the next person. I got to the finish line and my sister was panicking. She'd talked to the race directors and she was like, "Hey, my brother hasn't come in yet. Like, are you on track of him?" And they were like, "Oh, no. All the 20 milers are definitely in." Then they realized I wasn't, and they were about 10 minutes off from, you know, like kind of starting to sound the alarm and figure out where that chubby dude was. And then I came rolling in. And it was awful, but it was incredible. You know, it was at that point the hardest thing I had ever done. And my pace was, I don't know, 19-minute miles probably, but it was incredible. And I was hooked. I knew that I wanted to do another one almost immediately. So
where are you now, would you say?
So I just did my first 50-miler.
Wow.
In December. I did the North Face Endurance Challenge in San Francisco. And it was incredible. It was really, really hard, but maybe I got lucky and had a good race, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. You know, I really thought there would be at least one point in the race where I would contemplate quitting or would just really, really be in a bad place. And it never happened. I'm slow. I am. And, you know, I'll probably never be fast, but that's my biggest challenge right now is those nasty cutoffs.
Hard Rock is a 30-hour cutoff? Or sorry,
Leadville. Yeah, 30 hours. You know, and it's not just the finishing cutoff. I mean, it's this cutoffs at I think every aid station except for the first one. So that's a pretty burly beast to be following you down the trail the whole way. And that's really my goal with my trainer right now, is to get a little bit more wiggle room between me and the cutoffs. in San Francisco at the North Face Endurance Challenge, I would have missed the cutoff by 2 minutes, but the conditions were really, really terrible this year. It was excessively muddy, and so they ended up they gave everyone a little grace time. They gave everyone a few more seconds per minute. So I ended up still, right at the cutoff, but I ended up making it. But that's a really rough thing to wrap your head around. I was coming in for the last 3 miles, and I knew that it was going to be very, very, very close. And my last 3 miles were actually the fastest 3 miles of my whole run that day.
Really?
Yeah, they were downhill, so there's that. But I mean, even compared to all my other downhills of the day, they were without question the fastest, because I knew how close it was going to be, and like how frustrating to finish your first 50 miler and roll in 2 minutes after the cutoff. I mean, I guess the only thing worse would be 1 minute or 30 seconds, but I knew how close it was going to be. And I was coming around the corner, and I was no less elated, because I was just so stoked that I had finished. And you know what? 2 minutes, like, that's no big deal. Like, all this stuff is rolling through my head as I'm walking up. I'm like, I'm still excited. I'm not gonna be a negative Nancy about this. This is still awesome. I'm finishing. I'm still super pumped. And then I crossed the line and found out that they actually gave everyone some extra time. And so it ended up being double as good. But I approached the finish line, deciding that it was okay. It was okay that I came in 2 minutes past.
We hear a lot of ultra marathoners say that the more important part of the race is your mental approach rather than your physical fitness. While the physical fitness is obviously important, it sounds to me like you really have the mental strength locked down. Like, if we go back to that 20 miler, like, not worrying that you're going to be last, just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't remember who it was that said it or where I read it, but I remember when I first heard that the key to ultra running was experiencing pain and making the choice to keep moving despite the pain. And that was kind of a, I don't know, a light bulb went off for me. And I was like, well, what does happen? I always quit when it gets really bad. I mean, as most people would. But what happens if I don't? It turns out a lot of times it goes away. A lot of times it gets better. And I find that for me, my emotional state on the trail is really closely tied to my physical state. I don't know if it's blood sugar or what it is, but my mind really starts to go south when I need nutrition, when I need to eat. I have a lot of difficulty focusing on the trail. I mentioned that I don't like to listen to music, and I just like to let my mind wander, which is great. But the downside of that is that while my mind is wandering, I forget to drink. I forget to eat. It really affects where I'm at mentally. Yesterday, I already know this. It's just so hard to think about it in the moment when you're in those hyper emotional states. But yesterday I should have had a Cliff Bar, and I bet in 20 minutes I would have been a completely different guy. But I was close to my Jeep. I didn't want to keep running. I was tired, and I gave up yesterday.
Let's keep talking about diet and nutrition. We don't actually talk about those sorts of things a lot on the show, but it's so relevant here. You said you're a vegan earlier. How did you decide, and when did you decide to go vegan?
Well, I went vegetarian first, maybe, I think it was a little over 6 years ago. And it actually started as a dare. I had a friend in college who knew that I grew up on a pig farm, and he was a super vegan, and I didn't really have an opinion on it, but he knew that my dad was a pig farmer, and he loved to engage me in, arguments. That's what they were. And he was easily riled up. And so I used to have so much fun just messing with him. And one day he said, well, I bet you can't do the PETA 30-day challenge. I was like, okay, what's the PETA 30-day challenge? And, it's going vegetarian for 30 days. And I was like, well, I definitely can do that. So I did it. And in the process of doing it, I did my research to make sure I was doing it healthfully. And, the more research I did, the more I was like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe this actually kind of makes sense for me, you know? I never wanted to go hunting with my dad as a kid. I had, 13 cats. It all kind of makes sense. Like maybe I actually would prefer to be vegetarian. So it started with that, and I went vegetarian, and then that led to me pursuing the same knowledge, but in a more general nutrition sense. And once I learned what was really in a beet, I was so much more excited to eat it because I knew what it could do for me. And so that's really the beginning process for me. Then 2 years ago, I moved to Los Angeles, and I decided to give vegan a go. I was like, I'm going to do it for 1 year and see how it goes. And it was definitely a lot harder. Vegetarian wasn't that big of a difficulty for me, but vegan, if anyone tells you switching to vegan isn't hard, they're lying to you because it is tricky. It's certainly not impossible, but it is definitely more difficult, especially for a runner, which is still weird for me to call myself a runner. I guess I'm a runner. It's even more difficult. The protein thing. How much protein do we need? Like I get plenty of protein, but just to feel, especially since I've started training for ultras, if I'm not really careful with my nutrition, I just have an overall sense of fatigue, and it's really important to keep myself fueled. But also I still have a ways to go in the belly department. I've lost just over 100 pounds, but I have a few more to lose. And so that's a tricky tightrope to walk, like losing weight, but I can't have too much of a calorie deficiency because I have to run 23 miles tomorrow. And so it's really been, I don't know, it's been a challenge, but I feel better than I've ever felt in my entire life.
The belly department. Coming up on MTNmeister.
It blows my mind. First of all, I would never voluntarily put myself in a situation where I was running with him. It would be so embarrassing. I think I probably would never run again.
But first, a word from one of our sponsors, Champion Sport Extreme. I spoke with Steve McSherry about the company and compression.
Compression in general is used to increase blood flow in the lower legs. Our cardiovascular system being a closed-loop system, blood that pumps from the heart has to return back. And obviously with gravity, that blood is forced to the lower extremities where pooling can occur, which can lead to leg fatigue or swelling of the lower leg. So what compression really does is it squeezes those lower muscles in the foot and in the lower calf and upwards toward the leg. And it forces that blood flow back up to the heart, where it can get more oxygen and pump to those body parts that you need it to be pumped to.
So, Steve, Champion Sport Extreme, some of our listeners may not have heard of this brand in particular. Tell us a little bit about the brand.
Well, we're a new brand to the marketplace. Although we are a new brand, our umbrella company called Surgical Appliance Industries, SAI for short, we've been in business for over 120 years manufacturing orthopedic braces and supports. And CSX is an offshoot of SAI. So although we're a new brand, we have deep roots in the medical compression industry. And we've carried that expertise from the 30 plus years that we've been manufacturing medical grade compression into a sports sock, and then adding all the extra features and benefits that the sock has.
Looking at some of the different features you have, I would feel like I'm a machine putting these on. We have V-Guard shin protection. What does V-Guard shin protection do?
Well, what V-Guard shin splint protection does is it keeps the calf. There's a direct correlation between shin splints and the calf muscle. And due to impact sports, running, for example, or even hiking on a mountain trail, the calf oscillation is really extreme and can be at points. So what our sock does is it cradles the calf muscle very, very nicely in order to prevent that calf muscle from oscillating too much. If it does oscillate too much, you can get minor tears, which can lead to shin splints at the front of the leg. And the weave in our sock is a little bit different. So not only do we cradle the calf muscle in order to prevent that oscillation, But on the front of the sock, we also keep the shin very, very tight and protected in order to prevent other oscillation that will affect the muscles around the shin.
For 50% off of your entire purchase at csxchampion.com, type in the code MEISTER, MEISTER, at checkout. 50% off compression socks and everything else they have. Steve, thanks for that great deal.
Oh, it's my pleasure and great to talk to you.
So your coach is Ian Sharman. Many of our listeners probably know who Ian is, or at least anybody who's familiar with the ultra world. He won Leadville in 2013, I believe. How is that going? I mean, I assume this is your first running coach?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's amazing. I mean, it's awesome. I just, he's in San Francisco and I'm in Los Angeles, and so we do all of our meetings via Skype. And every time his face pops up, I just chuckle inside because it just feels so ridiculous to be talking to him and to know that he's spending any time thinking about what this chubby ginger should be doing. And it's a little surreal at times, but it's incredible. I mean, he is, when I first approached him, I wasn't even sure he'd be down for the challenge. I mean, he coaches some amazing athletes, but he was so stoked. He was ready to dive in head first, and he's amazing. He's so centered. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to chat with him or anything, but he's always an even keel. When things are going really well for me, he's Ian. When things are going really bad, he's still the same Ian. When I tell him I missed 3 of my runs during the week, he's still the same grounded flatline Ian. And it's really nice to have that consistency. And not to mention, his expertise. I mean, it doesn't get much better than Ian Sharman. And honestly, he has a similar story. I mean, not that he was ever on the sofa at 340 pounds, but he has not always been an endurance athlete. It was something that happened for him a little later in life too. So granted, I'm starting a little further back than him, and I'm not really giving myself the goal of winning any races. It's still nice to know that he's gone through all the same things that I'm going through, ironing out nutrition and all of that stuff. So, in addition to his knowledge, just his personality and support and just the way he handles things is also just priceless.
Have you ever run with him?
No. Oh, no.
Well, I'm just wondering, how incredible or maybe depressing, I don't know, it would be to run with him, because sometimes when I'm running in Boston, along the Charles, or the Charles as they call it in Boston, I'll see a lot of the college runners, from Boston University or Harvard, MIT. There are a lot of colleges around that area, and when they run by me, it's just like I don't understand how a body can move like that. They look like an antelope.
Yeah, no, it blows my mind. I first of all, I would never voluntarily put myself in a situation where I was running with him. It would be so embarrassing. I think I probably would never run again. I mean, maybe if he was going for a stroll, I might run with him. But no, I would never. But yeah, we were talking about downhilling the other day. I've taken some tumbles. All right. I have taken some really rough tumbles while downhilling, and I'm terrified of it. And I downhill with my brakes on the whole time. And it's just, it kills my legs on the downhills. And so we're just talking about how, he was just saying that you really need to let loose. You need to feel a little out of control. And so I tried that this weekend, and I felt really good about it. And then I happened to run across a video of him. I think he posted it on Instagram of him downhilling, and he looks out of control. It looks absolutely terrifying. And he's flying down this hill at I don't know, it's 6.5 minutes a mile. And I thought my downhilling at 12 minutes was awesome. And so, I see that and I'm just like, wow, I have so far to go. And I don't even know that I could ever get there. It's just, it's nice to have perfection to look at, and I'm not somebody who, I'm fine being at the back of the pack. I'm fine rolling in right before the cutoff. So I'm not someone who feels like they always have to win. So I can watch him and, just be inspired and just watch him in awe, not be jealous or like, oh, I have to do that. Right. And so that's nice, just to have someone who is so supportive, who is, he's also like not at all judgmental. I mean, so many endurance athletes at his level who could have potentially coached me could be, condescending, could be secretly rolling their eyes at my 15-minute miles. And he's not. He's so stoked. Like when I cut 10 seconds off of my long run last week, he was so excited. And so, he's just super approachable, which was really important to me because, I put myself through the ringer enough. I don't need somebody else, judging me, I guess.
From coaching to gear, we like to get a gear recommendation from everybody that we have on the show. Jeffrey, what would you recommend? What item of gear would you recommend for our listeners?
For me, I got a new running vest, a Nathan Vapor Wrap hydration vest right before my 50 miler, which was a bad idea to switch out gear right before, but it ended up working out really, really well. Just because I'm so slow that I'm out for a long time without being able to grab water or food, and I went from a really, really minimal hydration pack to this bad boy. And this thing has pockets for days. And so it really changed my nutrition game because I could really pack on the stuff. And, I have 50 extra pounds on my body. So, another 16 ounces in my pockets doesn't slow me down too much. So I really like it. I know a lot of people like to go more minimal, but I'm out so long that I'd rather have some extra weight and just fill my pockets with all the nutrition I can.
Very great. The Nathan running vest on Jeffrey's Meister profile page on our website, MTNmeister.com. Just to rewind back to kind of this journey thus far, on the crowdfunding page, you have a 10-minute video, and in that 10-minute video, which gives a great kind of overview of what you're doing here, there is one kind of emotional part where you talk about your mom and you say, like the doctors told her that her condition was changeable. Like she had to lose weight and change her lifestyle. But in the end, she couldn't do it. It was just too hard. What has been the hardest part for you thus far?
Well, just when you bring that up, I really wish that I would have discovered this new lifestyle in time to help her. I wish that instead of her passing being the impetus, I really wish that I knew what I know now about nutrition and exercise. I really wish I would have learned it, 10, 15 years earlier, because I really think I could have helped her out a lot more than she was able to help herself. It's so ingrained in the lifestyle, that rural Midwestern lifestyle of casseroles and fried chicken. And it's, you say like, oh, just lose some weight, just change your eating. But it's so ingrained in the culture and how we do things that it's a really tall order. And, she just couldn't, and also exercise. Exercise is not ingrained in our culture. I moved to the West Coast and everyone's out hiking all the time. Oh, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went on a hike with my grandma. And that's not how we roll in Missouri on the farm. And so, yeah, she just couldn't do it. So, I guess that, that's really one of my, biggest wishes that will never come true, but I really wish I could have shared with her what I know now.
Yeah, well, it may not come true for what already happened, but going forward, especially with you creating the film,
that's what we're hoping to inspire.
Yeah,
well, that's what we're hoping for. But the film isn't just about ultra running. The film is about inspiring people to find their Leadville. There's something incredible. We're only here on Earth for so long. As cliche as it is, I'm learning to take advantage of the time that I have. So also during the length of the campaign, anyone who uses the hashtag #FindYourIncredible on Instagram or Twitter will be entered in a drawing for a $250 REI gift card. So use Find Your Incredible and tell us what you're up to.
We will have highlights of this whole episode on our website, MTNmeister.com. Running is generally a cheap sport, but making a movie about the whole thing isn't cheap at all. People can check out the Indiegogo page where you're raising for Once Is Enough, or go to onceisenoughfilm.com. To wrap things up, we like to see who you'd like to see as the next Mountain Meister.
Do they have to be living?
Yes, they do.
Oh, no.
Who's the dead person you were going to recommend?
Well, it was two. I was going to say Lewis and Clark. I've had a really weird fascination with them since I was a little kid. And like, as silly as it is, they've definitely instilled a sense of adventure in me. And while I'm on groomed trails, I know where I'm going and I know where I'm finishing. I don't know. That's really like, I think that's why I love ultra running, is because it feels like an adventure every time, you know? So Lewis and Clark, they would be, gosh, wouldn't they be a good good get for your podcast? Oh man, we
can do Ian Sharman.
Yeah, I think that's probably a great idea. He's a really interesting guy. He's British, so you know he's fancy, and his advice is always sage advice, and it's always given. I don't know, it sounds corny, but from the heart. Like, he's always very sincere, and I think if anyone can get him to chat them up and share his thoughts, they're always priceless.
For the listeners, keep an eye out for either Lewis and Clark or Ian Sharman on a future episode of Mountain Meister. Jeffrey James Binney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Highlights of today's episode on our website, MTNmeister.com. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Yep, thank you. Take care.
Hey, Meister fans. Thanks for listening to that episode with Jeffrey James Binney, number 119. That's a whole lot of podcasts. If you like the show, don't forget to leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps other people discover this show so they can enjoy it as much as you can. We have incredible deals on our website that you should absolutely take advantage of, including 50% off of Champion Sport Extreme, compression socks, and everything else in their online store. Go to the deals section on our website to find out more. And finally, as usual, enjoy doing the rest of whatever you do when you listen to Mountain Meister. I'm the host, Ben